Welcome to Rich Planet TV. I'm Richard D. Hall and I'm joined again by Neil Saunders. Welcome, Neil.
Thank you.
Now, last week we spoke about psychotronic devices, which are small implants put in people's minds, and then we finished by talking about how radio waves or microwaves can also be used to influence people and even be used as weapons in conflict. And one method that people claim is used to control people's minds is via music.
Yeah.
Now, just before, today's show is going to be about music and its effect on society. But before we do that, you've almost completed a book, Neil. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically a book about mind control, and it's going to chart sort of the origins, the architects, the intentions of mind control projects like MK Ultra, how it connects to Tavistock, the different doctors involved, the different techniques, then psychotronic weaponry, the different techniques that are involved in that, and then basically it's going to move on to mass mind control and how we're all affected by things like advertising, by things like music, by genres, by sort of attaching ourselves to broader spectrums. Then I'm going to show how the news media and this all helps to paint a perception of the world, and then hopefully show how all these things are actually interconnected, things like music, advertising, news and military-industrial complex.
Perception management, you might call it.
Oh, absolutely, perception management, yeah.
Now, have you got a title for the book yet?
I think it's going to be called Your Thoughts Are Not Your Own.
Okay, all right. Now, I spoke to Gemma King, an academic at Aberystwyth University, about her theories about mind control and how music is perhaps not the free-thinking thing that we think. It's actually orchestrated by a cabal or an elite. Now, I got a mixed reaction to that show. I got some very positive emails saying, you know, thank you for exposing this. My child listens to Lady Gaga, Rihanna, blah, blah, blah. I always thought there was something funny about it, and now you've spelled it out. I got other emails saying, what a load of rubbish. Music industry's always been full of strange, you know, music which people use to rebel against their parents, and that's all it is. You're making a mountain out of a molehill type comment.
Well, we'll see.
So, where do you stand on it then?
Well, the thing about music, the entertainment industry is several things. For a start, when we're not at work, this is your leisure time. So whatever, if we can dictate actions and beliefs through your leisure as well as your work time, well then you're completely controlled. The other thing that music does is it creates role models, it creates heroes, it creates trends and genres and groups that we can all attach ourselves and become involved in. Aside from that, music can actually physiologically affect people, and you know, a very, very basic way that everyone's heard is when you've heard your favourite song and you go, oh, brilliant, and suddenly you feel like you've got this rush of energy. A minor chord will invoke sad feelings.
There's no doubt.
A major chord will invoke positive feelings.
The music, somehow, it connects to something that nothing else can. It's, you see people in a pub and they're enjoying a song and they'll be singing it and they don't even know the words.
It has a hypnotic effect,
and
exactly.
They don't know the words, but they're singing it because they're just so enjoying that song.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's connecting to something really primeval, I think, music.
Yeah.
It's getting right inside the heart of you.
Completely, and that's a very good point, that sometimes you'll be able to sing things, but if you're asked to write down the lyrics, you won't, because it's affecting you on a subconscious level. David Huron, he wrote in Music Quarterly in 1989, he was talking about jingles. Now, if you think about, everyone's got a jingle that just sticks in your head. They're designed to do that. It's called mnemonic jingles, and basically the first one was in the 50s, it was Pepsodent toothpaste, but what he says is it might play many different and complementary roles in advertising, such as attracting attention, implicitly or explicitly carrying the message, creating emotional states, or acting as a mnemonic cue. In practical terms, classical conditioning implies that pairing a product with a liked piece of music should produce an association between the two, and therefore a liking of the product. And now, obviously, this doesn't always work, but some musical advertising campaigns are so powerful that we now don't think of them as that piece of music. We think of them as the Hamlet cigar music, or the Hovey's bread music, or you know, the Levi's ad music, or whatever. And you know, one way of showing this is that every single Levi advert in the world is producing a number one single. Yeah. Okay, so it obviously got some sort of effect on it. The reason that you'll play music when you're on a call centre, for example, you know, it's like, in a minute you'll be da-da-da-da-da-da. That's to trick your brain into not noticing how long you've been on the phone for. Music can alter your perception of time. How many times have you been to a concert or whatever and you've gone, oh, is that it? Oh, actually, they've been on for 2 hours. Wow, but it was just such a fun time that I completely forgot about it. Lullabies will relax you. Sea shanties will focus you into work.
Yeah.
The funeral march would be a completely inappropriate thing to play at someone's wedding because, as I say, there are sociological learn responses to
I had a
things.
friend who always in the middle of July used to open all his windows and play Here It Is, Merry Christmas, just to like annoy the neighbours.
Good. Well, I mean, anybody that's still, this is a bit thin. Apocalypse Now, the bit where the napalm the forest and the play Rise of the Valkyries, it's to stir up the participants and it's to strike fear into the enemy. This is why boxers come out to a theme tune to really pump themselves up and psych themselves up. And you know, this epic, grand music is an expression of me. So if you're going to fight me, you're not fighting me. You're fighting this huge, epic thing, basically.
Right.
I
mean, when the Rich Planet TV theme tune comes on, in certain households, one partner will attack the other.
Fair enough.
I have been told that it causes problems.
It also works in other...
So, but what I'm saying is, it's the theme tune that triggers it.
Yeah.
There'll be one of the partner that likes the show and another one can't stand it. That tune comes on and it triggers that negative or positive reaction. Or it might be the... For example, I'll give you an example. When I was 10, my family moved house, and it was a very upsetting, traumatic time for me. And there's a few songs which were Kate Bush song actually that I listen to that now, and it really makes me fill up because it reminds me of that time.
Yeah, or you know, there was a song that I used to listen to with this girlfriend, or you know, my father used to like this song, or we played this at somebody's funeral, anything like that. Of course it does. It also affects you in ways that you possibly don't realise. In shopping, have you ever wondered, like, why do they play music in shopping centres? Yeah. It's to fill your brain. Like, James Calaris is basically, he's a professor at the University of Cincinnati. He's concerned with marketing. Music is used, your brain has got like a finite bandwidth. So there's this much information can go into your brain. If I've filled this much of it with music, you've only got this much that's already been dazzled by all the colours and stuff like that. It impairs your critical analysis. Try doing a load of maths problems while singing that terrible Chumbawamba song or whatever, or any chant, anything like that. Have you ever noticed that drive time DJs, they can speed up or slow down traffic by the tempo of the song that they play? You can, like a lullaby, the reason a lullaby works is because it drops you to an alpha state brainwave in a similar way to television by resonating with your natural heartbeat. Now, even William Sargent was Tavistock sponsored at St Thomas's Hospital in London, MK Ultra doctor that was sharing notes with Ewan Cameron in Canada. He was saying the same thing, that one of the easiest ways, he was actually looking at it in sort of tribal and religious scenarios, you know, voodoo rituals or whatever. If you hit people with overstimulation by a series of different rhythms, you can affect them. And here's one thing, next time that you go on this, I don't know, if you see the God TV or the 700 Club or whatever, every evangelical Christian organisation ever where they have like, you know, pass the collection plate, they'll keep you on your feet and they'll make you sing. Because when you're singing, you go into a trance because it's learned behaviour.
Yeah, hymns in a church where they're just, as you say, they put you into this frame of mind where you just more readily accept certain information or indoctrination.
Of course, because it's for two reasons. Because A, you've got that less space in your brain for critical analysis, but also you're concentrating on something that drops you into a repetitive thing like this. So. I mean, the other big one that most people will actually be aware of is films. Watch a film with the incidental music taken out, and it's a completely different scenario. If you think about the music in Psycho or the music in Jaws, what this is called a non-linear sound, and how this works is it represents, or into your subconscious brain, it either evokes the idea of a dying animal, like ree, ree, ree on the Psycho thing, or a growling animal, like on the Jaws theme. And the clever thing about the Jaws theme as well is, exactly, and the gap in between the two notes adds tension, because you're like, in your subconscious, you're like, I've heard something dangerous. Where is it? Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
And so this is how they work.
I remember that as a child, queuing up to go and see Jaws. I mean, that music was something else. The Jaws music.
Yeah, I mean, it just basically shows you how very, very powerful
Yeah.
all of these things can actually be.
Yeah. Now, just to get back to the music industry, Neil, I'm coming to the sort of view that the icons of music, the big figures, and I'll just name some:
Yeah.
McCartney, Lennon, Michael Jackson, Britney Spears, who else? Lady Gaga of the modern lot.
Nicki Minaj,
I'm
Beyonce.
That they're possibly possessions or being manipulated somehow.
Yeah, well, of course they are. I mean, one of the things that people don't realise, and this is without getting into the Illuminati stuff, let's take Time Warner, for example. Time Warner, which puts out a lot of Interscope and very numerous other
Madonna is the other one I was trying to search for. Yeah.
These companies are not just owned by, they're not just music companies, they've got connections to military industrial complex, they've got connections to Lockheed Martin, they've got connections to these other things, and a famous example of this was Tupac Shakur. Tupac Shakur on his first album, which was one of the highest selling, he was the biggest rap artist of the time, he came up with a line that says, "We've got money for wars, but we can't feed the poor." Because of this, because his parent company of his record label was owned by a military industrial complex, that's affecting our shareholders, that's affecting our share prices. So they refused to release his second album for 5 years. That's how powerful. You go off message, emancipate yourself from mental slavery, you're dead. This is it. Look at the artists that are actually making a positive contribution and see where they are now. Where's Jimi Hendrix? Where is Pete Tosh? Where is Bob Marley?
Yeah.
Where are all these people that are actually making positive inroads into things? Because they're not on script, they're gone. The thing that I sort of seem to notice was that when you get a genre, a new genre, an emerging genre that could divert attention and stuff like that, it's homogenised and it goes through a 3-stage process.
Okay, so a new kind of brand or style of music comes along. Punk would be a good example.
Jazz, hip hop, Bill Haley.
That young people are attracted to, and the
garage, dubstep, any of these,
right.
You'll see the same 3 stages.
All right, so you say it somehow it gets subverted. In other words,
yeah,
so tell us those 3 stages.
Well, the first thing that we do is what I call it cautionary curiosity commodity. Okay, first off, we're told that this is detrimental to the kids. Who will save us from the kids? This is teaching them this. The Sex Pistols are vomiting on stage. If you go to a garage show, you will almost certainly be killed. All of this, and it's the shock in the media to basically say this is the most evil thing that we've come across. Keep your kids away from this, okay? And it's an immediate dismissal of it without actually examining the facts. It did the same thing with Public Enemy, saying these are anti-white. They're not anti-white. They're pro-equality, and there's a difference. So we've got that, and we're talking about, and this can be seen like this first Sex Pistols tour was banned in all but 3 venues, okay, because of interference from MPs. When hip hop was becoming big in America, Dan Quayle and a woman called C. Dolores Tucker were causing huge amounts, and Tipper Gore's, Al Gore's wife, also causing massive amounts of problem because this is the big ill in society. Second stage is called curiosity, and it's basically what we're going to do is we're going to take the mickey out of it. Okay, so we're going to have Bill Cosby doing a rap on the Cosby Show. We're going to have Dick Emery dressed up with a mohawk and go, oh, look at this, look at the silly way that these punk rockers dress.
Right.
Softens it off, makes it something. Sorry, if we can laugh at it, we're not scared of it anymore.
Right.
The third stage is that we absorb it. We soften it off. We get other artists that are not quite the same, but they're discernibly similar. Right. And then all of a sudden you've got these fine bands that's all right. We can have punk bands like this because essentially they're not really saying anything. And what you'll get then is we've got it as a commodity, a homogenised commodity. So when you've got punk bands selling Converse trainers or wearing Converse trainers, which is owned by Nike, which runs it's basically slave labour all over the world. Or when you've got rap artists who essentially have come from a ghetto or dragged themselves out of the urban environment, boasting about the diamonds that they're wearing with no concept of the fact that the De Beers diamond company is a Freemasonic or an organisation that has destroyed Africa, we're missing the point of the initial genre, if you see what I mean. And so it has been subverted and moved away, and it's no longer a problem.
So where do you stand on the heavily publicised artists of today, the ones that the Lady Gaga, Rihanna, and Jay-Z that Gemma King spoke about? Are they completely manufactured from day one, or where do you,
it's not that they're completely manufactured. It's basically
I got into a pub or a nightclub and Rihanna comes on, and frankly I just find it poisonous. I want to walk out. It's so. There's something not right with it, in my opinion.
Well, the thing
and that's not because I'm just some old 40-odd-year-old guy. Fuddy-duddy. I really think there's something not right with that music. It's just poison to the mind or soul, in my opinion.
It comes to this concept of conspicuous consumption, okay, because basically it's mindless, a lot of the music today. And again, this is very difficult to talk about this without sounding like, in my day, this was all, you know, I remember when we had proper tunes that you could whistle. They're safe.
But these days it would be, I remember when there was proper bands like Sham 69,
exactly,
Harry.
Yeah.
So I would just be considered, well, you're just an old git, Richard. That's why you don't like Rihanna. You're not with it, man.
One of the things that a lot of people say is this music is rubbish. Now, no, it's not rubbish. It's incredibly cleverly designed. It's designed to stick in your brain.
It's clever rubbish.
It's clever rubbish, yeah. Okay, it's lowest common denominator, but it's been designed specifically to entrance you in. And the thing is, like, you know what I was saying about the fact that you've got to have that initial. Initially, people are scared of it. Nowadays, we're so savvy that you have to have that, otherwise kids won't accept it. So when Rihanna first came out, you know, she's doing things that are a bit sexy and stuff. Nicki Minaj is doing this and whatnot, and that's fine because unless our parents hate it, we don't like it. Yeah. But that's a marketing strategy.
Yeah. The parents have to hate it, otherwise it's not that good.
And I'll tell you the thing is, right? Okay, people say, "Oh no, you're going too far." People forget. Why did George Michael fall off the face of the earth? Why did the Dixie Chicks fall off the face of the earth? Do you want to know why? Because they started talking about 9/11.
Why did Michael Jackson literally fall off the face of the earth?
Why did Michael Jackson fall off the face of the earth?
Well, let's ask you about that.
Why did Jim Tosh die? Why did Tupac Shakur die? Why did Jimi Hendrix die? Why did Bob Marley die?
John
Lennon. All of these people that can utilise and channel youth energy. And then on the other side, you've got people like Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead and various other people, no doubt, that are there to, according to the FBI themselves, to move people away from politicisation.
Yeah. Another one is Sinead O'Connor. Was she quite political
She tore up a picture of the Pope when she was talking about sexual abuse through the Catholic Church and inferring to mind control practices. And that's it. That's her career done.
Right.
Basically, this is the thing. I mean, this is not a new thing. Even in the 60s, basically, when COINTELPRO, counterintelligence program, was coming out. This is a leaked document from 1970. It was leaked in 76, but basically it's about how to deal with the hippies.
Hold it there, Neil, because we're going to go for a break, and you can read that out after this. Welcome back. I'm talking with Neil Sanders about music. Now, Neil, you want to talk about COINTELPRO. Just to explain what that term means.
COINTELPRO it's an FBI project. It was J. Edgar Hoover. Essentially, what it is, it's counterintelligence. It's to infiltrate and to cause dissent with false news stories or rumours or whatever. And it was aimed at political activists, it was aimed at musical activists, it was aimed at the Black Panthers, and it was a project by which to discredit any anti-government movements. And obviously in the 60s we've got this new righteous movement, we've got the folk movement, and then going into the flower power movement and whatnot. And this is a declassified document talking about it. It says, when dealing with these people, show them as scurrilous and depraved, call attention to their habits and living conditions, explore every possible embarrassment, send in women and sex, break up marriages, have members arrested on marijuana charges, investigate personal conflicts or animosities between them, send articles to the newspapers showing their depravity, use narcotics and free sex to entrap, use misinformation to confuse and disrupt, get records of their bank accounts, obtain specimens of handwriting and provoke target groups into rivalries that may result in death. And if anybody wants to sort of have a look at the way that they split up the Black Panthers and got different factions of them essentially fighting with each other by lying. And this is shown in music. One of the most famous ones recently was the East Coast West Coast hip hop battles, where you've got the New York side of America and the West Coast of California side set up to hate each other, to absolutely hate each other over really nothing. But this is the point. The point is that music can utilise entire swathes of people. If they're willing to break the law and use prostitution, drugs and murder to stop musicians, then somebody's paying attention to it.
All right, so how is music today influencing young people? What is it making them do and not do?
Well, I mean, aside from the fact that music, I mean, it's incredibly powerful, music will affect the way you dress. It'll affect who your friends are. Especially at school, because, you know, your trendy guys aren't going to hang around with your rocker guys or whatever. It could even affect the person that you end up marrying or going out with, because you've probably met them at a club that listens to that particular music. You could even go so far as to say different genres of music have got different attributes that are considered desirable. If you look at the figures of women in hip-hop videos to the figures of women in metal videos or whatever, there's a difference. So genre can define what is considered the norm. Now, I know we've spoken before about sort of sexualisation of children and stuff like that, and I'm a bit wary about this because I don't want to come across as a prude, because frankly, I don't care. But when you've got people like Britney Spears dressing up as a schoolgirl, but with her underwear hanging out or whatever, that, you know, we're going down a strange route there. You've got Christina Aguilera saying in her song Genie in a Bottle, that song's about a girl deciding whether or not to give up her virginity, and she does this, basically, you'll be able to do that if you rub her the right way. That's fine. Personally, I've sent lots of emails off to her offering that very service. So far, she's not got back in touch with me. But the point is, her key audience is 6-year-old girls. So when you've got 6-year-old girls blindly singing this back, that's perhaps a problem, especially considering these are supposed to be role models. We're looking at, say, Lady Gaga and stuff like that. What the message of Lady Gaga is essentially positive female role models. The highest attribute you can have is your sexuality. That's what they're teaching people. Right. Let's have a look at some lyrics, okay? Destiny's Child, Beyonce. Christian R&B group, in their song Soldier, so what parent could possibly object to that? No one. In their song Soldier, that this is the ideal man for Destiny's Child, and then by inference their fans. I need a soldier that ain't scared to stand up for me, normally carry big things, if you know what I mean. Now, for anybody that's not down with the kids, what that means, carrying big things, is a loaded gun. So Destiny's Child, a positive role model Christian R&B group, have said that the perfect man for them carries a gun.
Right. So let's just say that is not her writing that lyric, and it's an orchestration from...
It probably is. I doubt that any of them... When you say, oh, Lady Gaga says she writes her own songs, she may have come up with a chord progression, but she's not writing her own songs. You look at her thing, it's her and then 17 other high-paid producers. And this is what we're saying about it. It's not rubbish, it's very, very clever.
So the likes of the Tavistock Institute and maybe the CIA, who you think are maybe manipulating music.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, what would be the intention of sexualising children at a young age and making them say those lyrics?
It's just a disintegration of the family state, isn't it? It's just like, you know, it makes
things... So you think there's an agenda...
It's fine, it's perfectly...
To stop people living in normal family units? You think that there's an actual agenda to do that?
I think when people are concerned with sex and conspicuous consumption, again, they're not really being politics. They're not going to be paying attention to things. And we've got this thing at the minute...
To divert them.
Well, yeah, but it's not just the diversion, it's the raising up of these things, like a fancy car, a beautiful girlfriend, a lot of exotic sex. It's raising these things up to be the only things that people desire.
I mean, it could be something as simple as young people are going to listen to music.
Of course they are.
Right? They do. That's what people do. So music can be massively influential in informing someone. So they say, well, they're going to listen to it.
We might
as well have them going down that way, so they're not going to end up being revolutionaries or critical thinkers.
And one example of what happens when you don't play to the thing is what happened to Jimi Hendrix. Now, what a lot of people possibly don't realise is that Jimi Hendrix, his manager was a bloke called Michael Jeffrey. He was an MI6 agent, and he admitted on many occasions to killing Jimi Hendrix. Right. What they did was, he didn't drown in vomit, he drowned in wine. Right. because he sacked Michael Jeffrey and was showing his support to the Black Panthers. Originally, Jimi Hendrix, strangely, was actually pro-Vietnam War because he came from a military father background and whatnot. It was when he came to England and was speaking to all the other bands and stuff, he realised that actually now this isn't cool. He sacked off Michael Jeffrey and began to do fundraisers for the Black Panthers, and then he was killed. Now, a lot of people say, oh, come on. The bloke that did the autopsy on Jimi Hendrix said this is very strange because his lungs and his stomach are full of wine, and his throat's bruised, his hair's soaked with wine, and his clothes are soaked with wine, but there's no alcohol in his bloodstream.
Right.
It's almost as if someone's held him down and drowned him in it.
All right. Now, I mean, you could prove your point by saying in today's modern popular culture music, where is the role model, true role model?
Yeah.
Someone who is thinks critically, who is political, someone who is moral, and all the rest of it, someone that the young people would look up to. Where is that person?
Yeah, and the best expression of this is the way that gangster rap was utilised. Now, if anyone wants a sort of big background of this, you either go and buy the book by John Potash, which is called The FBI and the Assassination of Black Leaders, or listen to stuff that Professor Griff of Public Enemies actually spoke about on the internet. Excellent stuff. The point about gangster rap and Death Row Records, which is the main record company that promoted Snoop Doggy Dogg and Dr. Dre and Corrupt and Daz and all these people who were these are our rap stars.
Are these modern pop groups?
Yes,
Neil?
these are the people involved in the pop music.
Yeah.
What it did was it changed the concept. Prior to that, we had positive role models in rap. We had Public Enemy, we had DJ Kool Herc, we had African Bambaataa, and we had things like this. And they were basically talking about political equality, what is now called positive rap. What happened with the inception of Death Row, and it was utilised through Vibe magazine. Vibe magazine is one of the, it coined the phrase gangster rap. When you start to look at this, you realise that the popularisation of this gangster image was intrinsically linked to the CIA. Vibe magazine, which was run by Quincy Jones, was financed by the CIA. It was the principal organisation that promoted Death Row Records and gangster rap. Death Row Records itself, and I've got to say, I'm a big fan of this music, so I'm not trying to criticise the music. Death Row Records, the CEO of Death Row Records was a bloke called Harry O. Harry O was one of the main cocaine importers in the United States. He dealt directly with the Medellin. He also had suspicious connections to the CIA because the whole thing was connected, as is shown in Gary Webb's fine book, Dark Alliance, to the Iran-Iraq Contra. What was happening was that the CIA were bringing cocaine into America. They discovered how to make crack, and they were using it to kill black people in the ghetto. Through the expansion of gangster rap came this new image of young black men. This new image of young black men as gangsters that sold crack in the ghetto. This made it a desirable thing. It neutralised Public Enemy, it neutralised all these other positive rap acts because basically we've got this far more exciting thing. They're killing each other, they've got guns and drugs and girls hanging off them and stuff like that. So it progresses this image, this stereotype that of young black men as gangsters. And this is the image that is now portrayed from them. So if you think about rap, you wouldn't think of positive, you'd think of negative.
So what you're saying is that maybe in the early days it was considered, hey, this could be a bit threatening. This is something we want to manage negatively. We're going to put a, and so you're saying that the association of guns with rap, association of drugs with rap, that was an orchestrated move by the CIA.
Yeah, and it's all connected. You won't notice it's at the same time that the film Scarface is coming out, which presents the people with Al Pacino. Now, what's interesting is this film was slated all across the board, and yet it became hugely popular because what it did is it provided people with a not white hero. Okay, he's not black, but he's not white, so he could be seen as an anti-hero. And that concept of drug dealing kingpin is then pushed in. This is also proved by a bloke called Freeway Ricky Ross. Freeway Ricky Ross has not long come out of prison. He was another major player in getting crack into the ghetto. He dealt directly with the CIA. So we've got two major drug kingpins that just happen to be connected intrinsically with crack and the introduction of this new type of rap music. We've got people like David Kenner, who's the lawyer for Death Row, who is basically also functioning as a lawyer for several mafia families. And we've got this hype coming from Vibe magazine and various other things which show intrinsic financial connections to the CIA, hyping up this concept that this is the new genre. This is the way that you are to think about young black men now. They are gangsters.
Now, I just want to ask you about Michael Jackson, Neil, because I've heard it said that he was considering in his world tour that he was about to embark on before he died, that he was possibly going to start mentioning 9/11 truth.
Very possibly.
Have you heard that?
I've not heard that. I've heard that I've heard some of the speeches he's talking about how Sony is evil. And I've heard the stuff that what I found very interesting was the second that he died, Sony took control of the Beatles' back catalogue, which is one of the main assets. That within 2 weeks of Michael Jackson dying, we had a new Paul McCartney greatest hits and we had a new John Lennon greatest hits.
Right.
I'm assuming that they've seized back their assets, because Michael Jackson owned the Beatles' back catalogue.
Yeah. I mean, if you can just imagine Michael Jackson launch, because he hadn't been on tour for some years, and he's still a huge icon.
Yeah.
You know, and he is was a class act. No one can deny this guy's talent as a dancer, songwriter, and singer. If he just stopped his song halfway through and said, "Right, chaps, 9/11 inside job," imagine how much influence he would have. And do you think that could...
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that was always talked about was the fact that Lennon was talking about going into politics, well, and not in a major way, but that's the suggestion as to why John Lennon was killed as well, because he's somebody that can channel dissent in a intelligent and eloquent way.
And as you say, there are, if you go on YouTube, there are speeches of Michael Jackson recorded on people's phones and stuff, of him speaking very negatively about
Tommy Mottola. At one point, he basically makes a suggestion that Tommy Mottola, who was at the time the head of Sony Records and married to Mariah Carey, he makes a suggestion that Tommy Mottola is Mariah Carey's handler.
Right.
So, you know, who knows.
Right. All right, Neil. Well, we're going to go for another break, and after the break, we're going to talk about the Beatles.
In May 2012, Richard D. Hall will be speaking throughout the UK and Ireland. Ticket and venue details can be found on the richplanet.net website.
Welcome back. I'm talking with Neil Sanders about the music industry and drugs, because it is alleged that LSD was introduced by the CIA into popular music culture deliberately.
Of course it was.
Why was that done? Yeah?
Well, originally it came from Aldous Huxley. Now, Aldous Huxley was the author of Brave New World, but what people may or may not realise is that he was connected to the Tavistock Institute and British intelligence. He made this famous quote: "Let us consider another type of drug capable of making feel happy in situations where they would normally feel miserable. By making a harmless chemical euphoric freely available, a dictator could reconcile an entire population to a state of affairs that any self-respecting human being ought not to be reconciled." That was made at the Tavistock Group at the California Medical School in 1961.
Right.
So
you think it's possibly a way of, again, of stopping people from becoming effectively politically active?
Yeah, totally.
And a nuisance to existing power structure.
There's that aspect of it as well, and I want to be careful about this, because like this sounds like I'm saying gateway drugs. It's not gateway drugs at all. But if you're the sort of person that gets used to using LSD in a long way, you open yourself up for arrest later on, because you are associating yourself with what is a counterculture or whatever. Basically, you know, you're integrating entire swathes of society into something that then in 1971 we make illegal.
Right. You mentioned the Rolling Stones earlier, in that you thought in their earlier days they were more political, and there was drugs introduced and they were herded down a particular avenue. Just tell us about that.
I mean, this is all connected with a group called the Brotherhood of Eternal Love. Now, essentially, a lot of people would talk about LSD and Haight-Ashbury. We'll talk about the LSD cooks, certain people that basically were handing out LSD in a big way, and people will talk about Owsley Stanley, they'll talk about Alfred Hubbard, they'll talk about the Brotherhood of Eternal Love, Tim Leary and Michael Hollingshead. Now, Michael Hollingshead was an MI6 agent. He was sent by Aldous Huxley to provide Timothy Leary with a lot of acid. Hollingshead was the person that introduced the Beatles, Roman Polanski, Allen Ginsberg, all of these people who went on to become very, very sort of influential in this sort of flower power generation. He introduced them at the behest of British intelligence to taking large amounts of acid. Timothy Leary is possibly the most famous. He was studying at Harvard. He was turned into a non-dropout. He was one of the big promoters of LSD. Now, if you look at the actual work that he was doing, all his work was concerned with wiping away existing brain patterns using LSD and putting in helpful patterns. And if that sounds familiar, it's because it is. It's exactly what William Sargent and Ewan Cameron were doing. It's mind control. Timothy Leary's two main sort of people that were involved with him at Harvard were Cord Meyer, who was a CIA agent that was in charge of Operation Mockingbird. Operation Mockingbird is a sort of COINTELPRO thing where they introduce false news programs into the media to cause dissent and to make people, you know, go off on the wrong direction. And Frank Barron, who was also a CIA agent. Leary was basically interviewed many, many times, and in the end he basically says, of course I work for the CIA. The CIA are great. I was an active, willing participant in CIA experiments. Right. Now, when he was kicked out of Harvard, he was basically, luckily for him, there's a bloke called William Billy Hitchcock Mellon, allowed him to conduct these experiments on his estate. And he comes from a very rich banking oil family, and it was through this, they've also got connections to military intelligence, through this lucky happenstance that Timothy Leary was able to continue his previously CIA-sponsored experiments. Luckily, an elite family managed to step in and help him, so that's nice of them. Right. One of the people that basically introduced him on a wholesale level to LSD was this gentleman called Alfred Hubbard. Right. Alfred Hubbard is a very strange guy. Now, in his background, there's a lot of things that suggest mind control. When he was 19, he received a visitation by two angels. These angels taught him how to make a free motion, a perpetual motion device by which he made himself very, very rich. He later worked for the OSS bootlegging during Prohibition times. He was then hired by the OSS, the precursor to the CIA, to smuggle guns from Canada to the UK. He's another one of these people that basically is known as a Johnny Appleseed of acid. He was one of the people that managed to spread it out. Again, he worked for Teledyne, which is a NASA-based weapons facility, and the connections of this guy through the military-industrial complex is completely obvious. Okay. The other guy, and this is all coming back to the Rolling Stones. The other guy was a fellow called Owsley Bear Stanley. Mm-hmm. Now again, he comes from his real name was Augustus Owsley Stanley III, and his grandfather was the senator of Kentucky. He comes from a military background. He went to military school. He spent a year in a mental institute, he designed several of the types of acid. One's called Orange Sunshine. One's called Monterey Purple. Orange Sunshine is the one that I'm going to talk about in a second that connects to the Rolling Stones and shows that the CIA were involved in all of the musical influences. Monterey Purple is what the Jimi Hendrix song Purple Haze was named after. Okay, so Owsley Stanley designed this type of acid called Orange Sunshine, and it was specifically and exclusively distributed through Timothy Leary and a band of ragtag hippies called the Brotherhood of Eternal Love. It's a quasi-religious cult that operated off of the Hitchcock Mellon estate. Right. The second in command is Timothy Leary and a bloke called Ronald Stark. Mm-hmm. Ronald Stark was later arrested in Italy, and all charges were dropped against him because it had transpired that he'd been a CIA agent since before the 60s. Right. So again, the point about this Orange Sunshine is it shows up in several places that basically inform the beginning, the middle and the end of the 60s. The first, or the one area, is that the Manson family exclusively used... Charles Manson. This was recorded in Tex Watson, who was his right-hand man, depending on what you believe. In his autobiography, they're saying that they exclusively used Orange Sunshine LSD. Now, the only way they could have got this LSD was through the Brotherhood of Eternal Love, which, let's remember, Timothy Leary, CIA-sponsored, Ronald Stark, CIA-sponsored. Right. Several of the people that were actually involved in this later got arrested in a US Army black operations to smuggle marijuana into America. So again, the connections are there. The second incident, so we've got Charles Manson using Orange Sunshine. The second incident where Orange Sunshine is prevalent is the Vietnam War. It was by far the most prevalent acid used in the Vietnam War. How this ragtag bunch of 12 or 13 people in a VW van managed to get it to Vietnam, we're not quite sure. It also appeared at Altamont. Altamont was the free concert given by the Rolling Stones, which essentially sounded the death knell for the 60s. At it, the Hells Angels, who at the time, Sonny Barger, who was the head of the Hells Angels, was being used by the CIA as an assassin. He'd actually been hired to kill Cesar Chavez and Eldridge Cleaver, who was a Black Panther. They were the security for this. The Orange Sunshine at this gig, which went completely sour, was so powerful that they ran out of Thorazine, which is a countermeasure to this, after half an hour, and basically hundreds of people were left in a pathological state after this concert. The final incident, which shows that the CIA has got its fingers all over the place, is when the Rolling Stones were actually arrested. You may remember this is the famous bust where they broke open the door and they found Marianne Faithfull there. She was wearing nothing except a rug and a Mars bar, apparently. But what happened was there's a fellow called Schneiderman, David Schneiderman or Derek Schneiderman. Right. He was a mysterious Yank, as described by Keith Richards, that had 8 passports and a suitcase full of Orange Sunshine.
Right. So now, the CIA agent then? Clearly,
he was able to basically, the suggestion is that he is the person that actually called the police. He provided them with the acid and then basically sidestepped and was able to strangely go through the police lines to get it. The point that is sort of made by this is that this entire genre of music, the Haight-Ashbury scene, it was utilised to make San Francisco and this entire area one large petri dish. They were experimenting with these mind-controlled drugs.
So the Rolling Stones, do you think any of the members of the Rolling Stones were aware of this whole scheme to try and get LSD into the young population?
I don't
think that,
I know that they were very paranoid.
Were they just dupes to it, or
well, I know
that just
they were definitely very paranoid that they were basically being followed. I mean, after this bust, it very much looked like Mick Jagger was going to prison for a long time. Right. And I think this is how they managed to sort of curtail them back into, you know, you stick by the line, and we guarantee by the time it comes around to 2011, you'll be playing tours all over the world, and you'll be multi-millionaires and whatnot.
All right. Now let's just talk about the Beatles, because when I interviewed Gemma King, she was suggesting that there's people doing research saying that the Beatles didn't write any of their own music.
Yeah, it was a dormant.
You know, I got some nasty emails from Beatles fans when I said, well, when that was aired on the show, there's this German guy who was a friend of the Queen, allegedly wrote the Beatles' music. Is that where do you stand on that one?
I don't entirely buy that. I can believe that they were utilised. I mean, this comes from John Coleman. John Coleman, the Committee of 300. I mean, I haven't seen his research. He could be right. What he suggested was that Adorno of the Frankfurt School, who came up with the concept of the culture industry, you know, culture as a factory that mindlessly produces products for consumption, he, using his 12-note atonal scale or whatever, wrote these particularly catchy songs and gave them to the Beatles. I'm not sure. I don't think that would be entirely necessary. I'm sure they had help. I'm sure they did, because, you know, they're a massive industry.
Okay. Now, let's just come on, finally. To introduce this next thing we're going to talk about, I just want to mention Northeast Truth Group. There's a guy there, I'll not mention his name, but when I go along there, I occasionally have a chat with him, and he'll say to me, Richard, there's no conspiracy theory too wild for me. I look at all of them, So he's into the hollow earth theory. You've heard of that one. Now, the other one which we were talking about in the pub the other day and it makes me laugh, not because I have no view on it, okay? I'm a very open-minded person, as I have to be. Yeah. And I recently learned about this particular theory about Paul McCartney.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that I have any, I don't know enough about it, right? But the theory is it in 1966?
It was just prior to the theory is it's just prior to the recording of the Sgt. Pepper album. Paul McCartney died in a car crash.
Paul McCartney died in a car crash. Is that in '66?
I'm not sure.
I'm not saying this is true, folks. I'm saying that this is an alleged
this is the
conspiracy
theory,
right? And then he was replaced with a double.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that there's a series of clues left throughout
right.
Well, there's all sorts. Like
the double was called Fall.
Fall,
Fall.
the fake Paul. Some people
Fall.
suggest that his name was Billy Shields, which is what they say in before Get By With Little My Help From My Friends, the one and only Billy Shears.
Right. Now, and the reason that people give as to why he was bumped off and replaced is because he was not wanting to promote LSD and blah blah blah.
Well, he
wasn't really towing the line. This is the theory, no?
The theory that I heard is that basically he just died in a car crash, and the Beatles were such an enormous entity that from any sort of perspective, that they just had to continue on with it. And again, I'm going to reiterate, I'm not saying that this is what happened, but you could see a plausibility as to why somebody might do that. That's all I'm going to say. What irritates me,
there's loads of stuff on the internet.
Backwards masking and like there's clues in the album covers and stuff like that.
And there's also the clip of Heather Mills.
Yeah.
Who says that, and I know Heather Mills was absolutely crucified in the mainstream media. I don't know what people think of her, but the media did a hatchet job on her. That's for sure. But she says that she's got a box which has got evidence in it, and that she's had death threats to say that she must not reveal this information.
Yeah.
I mean, you came in here and said you fear for your life and for Beatrice's
The police
life.
came round, and this is why I'm speaking about this now, and I have a box of evidence that is going to a certain person should anything happen to me. So if you top me off, it's still going to go to that certain person, and the truth will come out. There is such a fear from a certain party of the truth coming out that lots of things have been put out and done. So the police came around and they said, you have serious death threats from an underground movement.
A lot of people think that the information that she has is proof that McCartney was switched in 1966.
I don't know, and you know.
So I'm going to start another conspiracy that the other three Beatles were replaced with Forge Harrison, Fon Lennon and Ringo Starr.
I mean, one thing that I do know is that basically the only thing that I know about is that John Lennon was no fool. He was asked by Playboy magazine if he'd ever still use acid, and he says, not in years, a little mushroom or peyote perhaps, it's not beyond my scope. You know, maybe twice a year or something, but you don't hear about it anymore. People are still visiting the cosmos, and this is a telling thing. He says, we must always remember to thank the CIA and the army for LSD. That's what people forget. Everything is the opposite of what it is, isn't it? So get out the bottle, boy, and relax. They invented LSD to control people, and what they did was give us freedom. Sometimes it works in mysterious ways. It's wonders to perform. If you look in the government reports on acid, the ones who jumped out the window or killed themselves because of it, I think even with Art Linklater's daughter, it happened to her years later. So let's face it, she wasn't really on acid when she jumped out the window, and I've never met anybody who's had a flashback on acid. I've never had a flashback in my life, and I took millions of trips in the 60s. The point that he's making is that he is aware that the military-industrial complex originally introduced LSD as a way to stymie dissent and to basically get people into a big heady fog so that they can't actually achieve anything of any use.
All right, Neil, well, I'll just ask you, what do you think the future holds for this? Do you think that
I think the future holds...
in 10 years' time there's going to be loads of mind-controlled people who are all controlled by computer programs?
Oh, very possibly. I think one of the things, particularly with music, is what I think you should notice is the amount of people that are coming out of either the X Factor or the Brit Academy.
Well, I mean, we haven't discussed any of that, have we?
No, well, you know, that's all that needs to be said. Look at the amount of artists and look at where they're coming from, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not talented or that even that their message is not sort of thing, but that it means that we've got a narrowing of output. All these people that are being told to you that they're real, they're, you know, you can get in with them. They're not. They're manufactured entities, and they're coming from a smaller and smaller source.
Yeah. All right then, Neil. Well, thanks very much for your comments. It's fascinating as usual. and good luck with your book.
Thank
and
you.
What I will do is, when you finish your book, we'll get that. I'll mention it on the show and
Smashing.
maybe get it sold on the site.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And,
That'd
we'll
be
do a
fun.
review of it when do you envisage it'll be finished?
Middle of April.
Middle of April,
Middle of April.
2012.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know when it will be coming out, but it'll be definitely be finished by the middle of April.
Right. So perhaps second part of this year, people may be able to buy it. I think.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right. All right, Neil. Thanks very much. It just remains for me to say, believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. I'm Richard D. Hall. Good night.